Greetings and welcome to Mount Olympus. I am Hercules Invictus, and today on Hercules and Space Gods, I bring you Nick Curto and Disclosure Network. Greetings, Nick. How are you?
Thank you, Hercules. Very, very good. Looking forward to this particular program because we're going to be discussing what's going on right now in August of 2016 with disclosure locally, worldwide, and there's a lot to discuss, of course.
I'm looking forward to learning from you and from Hal, who's also here. Welcome, Hal.
Yeah,
And
good to see you.
good to see you too. And I'm looking forward to your other guests when they arrive.
Excellent. Okay, we're going to start. Again, my name is Nick Curto, and I'm your host. Uh, 28 years ago, when a lot of friends said, Nick, why are you dealing with disclosure? There's a lot more important things going on. And I said, disclosure is the most important thing of our time. And we have to have meetings, we have to discuss it. And we've had 28 years, at least one or two meetings per month in Manhattan since then. So this is an amazing club organization. My heart goes out with great thanks to every member of our wonderful community who go to the meetings and participate. The disclosure is a gigantic subject. It's so important, and it's going to change a lot of things on this planet for sure. One of my guests tonight is a dear friend, my colleague, and my partner, Hal Rainbow. Hal, welcome.
Well, thank you. Good to be here.
And I saw Disclosure with you. Can you give us, please, what you thought it might be when before you saw the movie, and then take us to how you felt when after you've seen the movie, both good and bad, whatever.
Um, hmm, what did I think it was going to be? I thought it was possibly going to tie into Close Encounters of the Third Kind, since that seemed to be the first one of the set. And I didn't think it was going to go into that much about, formal disclosure with the government. I it that seemed like too almost too broad scientific a topic. You know, I before we saw it about a week before, I had heard an interview with Spielberg, and his comment was, "Remember, it's an adventure film, not a documentary." So going into it, having heard that, it really made the movie very enjoyable because I looked at it as an adventure movie. So it was extremely enjoyable that way. I did like certain things they threw in, such as without saying it exactly about Nixon and Jackie Gleason seeing the alien. I thought that was a nice little touch they put in. And they certainly did not hold back on what could have been some of the gruesomeness of the situation when they were questioning the aliens. So I thought in that way it was pretty realistic. I thought the treatment of the characters were pretty realistic. The only thing that I really did object to was the fact that they played the government is bad with the aliens card. That was kind of too cliche. I
Yeah,
thought
I can agree with that too. I thought the same thing. Um, were you happy that the fact that the subject of disclosure was being discussed by many, many people on the media and everywhere because of the movie? Were you happy about that?
um yeah, I would say that was a good reaction. I'm glad that the discussions went in all different ways. I certainly thought that was helpful. And it wasn't just a single-minded discussion. Disclosure is good, disclosure is needed, that they put up both the good and the bad, because there is.
Right, right. No, I totally get that. Oh, we have one of our guests also coming here. Joe Foster, welcome, sir.
Hi, Nick. I'm still working on my video here.
Okay, well, all right, very good. We are on the air, so to speak. We're recording this, but we are on the program right now, and I'm talking to Hal Rainbow, who
Hey,
is
Joe.
Hi, Hal. How you doing?
and
Good,
he's
good.
talking about, and I'm going to ask you the same questions about the movie and doing it at this time, and what are the repercussions, both good and bad. So that's generally what I'm asking. Hal, also I wanted to ask you, did you feel as though the audience and it was a full house. In fact, all New York movie houses were selling out with tickets for this movie. You couldn't get a ticket or hard to get. Did you feel as though the audience was responsive in a good way? Did you feel as though they were happy with the movie when they were leaving?
I think everybody enjoyed the movie. I don't think there was a great feeling of, yes, this is going to bring disclosure, or no, this is, terrible. I think it was people really enjoyed the movie and probably were going to discuss things about it afterwards.
Right, right. And I certainly wanted that because this is a subject that is so important and it really needs a lot of discussion and a lot of opinions about where we are. Can we accept truth as it comes to us? What is the truth? And should we be afraid? Should we embrace it? Stephen Greer has said, embrace it. Beings are your brothers and sisters from other areas, and we should look at that with love and respect. And that's what Stephen Greer has been saying all along, as opposed to seeing some horror movies where the aliens are vicious and attack and kill. And again, this is a wide spectrum of feelings about beings from other places and how they will affect our lives. Do you have any other ideas about that subject in general?
Well, in terms of the movie, I don't think this movie is going to particularly change anybody's mind. I think people went into the movie feeling a certain way about disclosure or ETs existing, non-existing, the role they're playing. And as I said, I don't think this movie is going to change anybody's mind. I think what it might do is open up discussion, about the way the characters were handled, about possibly if aliens are among us. I think it may open discussion about that. So in that way, it was good.
Okay. And what are your personal feelings about knowing that there are beings and they are here right now and they're part of our lives, our landscape? What are your personal feelings about that?
Hmm.
Do
Uh,
do you fear it? Do you welcome it?
no, no, I don't fear it. I don't agree with Dr. Greer that everything is good and wonderful. I don't think you can have every alien being good and wonderful and then talk about the Dracos who have been trying to enslave us for millennia. It just doesn't play right. And I also feel that we can't be the only planet that has multiple government, good and bad. But that's, I guess, a side note to what you were saying. I think it's pretty cool that, we have ETs among us. Um, I'm hoping at one point we'll learn about their culture, they'll learn about ours. Do I think they're super intelligent beings? They're probably smarter than us. They got here, something we can't do yet. And I don't think it's I don't think it's this either great or wonderful thing or terrible thing. I think it's just, they're here, they're learning what they want. I don't think it's going to be, it's a cookbook at the end. And I think probably it will be helpful. I think it's a good thing.
Okay, no, thank you for that. I think that I would agree with you that all ETs aren't good, loving beings. I don't believe that at all. Just like our own planet, we have the good, the bad, and the ugly. We have good people, we have bad people. And I think that that would be for all planets. I think there's probably a both going on. And the balance, of course, depends upon all kinds of factors. Here on our planet, certainly it's not a peaceful planet. We are a very, I mean, look at our planet right now. It looks like war is going to happen. It could be nuclear. We've been through this before, and even our world leaders are rattling the bombs, and part of what they're saying is that you better do blah 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 because we have nuclear energy, we have nuclear bombs, and we're not afraid to use them. And that really scares me. Every time I hear that from anybody in the politics in any country, that really worries me a great deal because
I,
it just kind of gives you one step closer to what we don't want.
I do hope the theory some people hold that the ETs will not allow us to shoot off the nuclear weapons like they shut down the testing. I don't remember exactly what it was numerous years ago when the nuclear weapons were going to be shot and they stopped it. I mean, I hope that's true and we have a little protection that way. It's nice to think there are creatures rooting for us. But then I
Right.
heard the reason they're preventing it would be the nuclear radiation going out into space more than anything else. But no matter what it is, all help is welcome.
Well, those are very good points, and I really do agree with what you're saying there. Okay, now I'm going to take the program to Joe. Joe, again, welcome, sir. Very happy to have you with us tonight.
Nick, it's
Nick, it's
great
great
being
being
here.
here.
And I think there's a echo because I think I have two going on here.
Yes, one
So
you're in Tahiti and one you're not.
yeah, I'm gonna. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Oh, okay, I killed one of my microphones. So don't know how that happened. They pumped out some new stuff. Zoom pumped out some new stuff to me. Anyway, I am here. As far as the conversation goes, it's a fascinating subject, and I think there's a lot of different ways of looking at it, especially the personal perspectives on it. I think if you talk to 10 different people, you're going to get 10 different perspectives. Um, Generally speaking, are there aliens? Yes, mathematically, I'd say that beyond a shadow of a doubt, there are. There are probably many, maybe in the thousands, tens of thousands, or even millions of different cultures spread throughout the known universe. But that doesn't really help us very much. Number one, our civilization, if you want to call it that, is so young that we're comparatively speaking, we're like ants compared to humans. Okay. So there's a gulf of difference between anybody that is able to travel the parsecs through space and time to get to us, probably have very little in common with us other than the fact that they are sentient beings and we're at some level of sentience. I just read a fascinating book that changed my entire perspective on our where we sit in the scheme of things. Um, not to denigrate what we are, but to put it into a perspective of what we may be and what the next level or the next levels may look like. And I think maybe that's also where, if there are other sentient beings, they do not have to be carbon based. They do not have to even be silicon based. Um, I just read a fascinating book about plasma. Okay, and the evidence that plasma, when mixed with nanometer-sized dust particles, spread throughout the universe because beyond our solar system, they have discovered, thanks to Voyager, going beyond the boundaries of our solar system, that it's not anything at all what physicists and scientists and astrophysicists were thinking they were going to find. There's a massive amount of energy, and the energy manifests itself in such a way that it sounds like it's plasma, and plasma that is interacting with dust. But the interesting thing about it, the book that I read, and like I said, I take it very much to heart, is that the plasma in dust is self-organizing. And that in of itself is an interesting concept because it could be a dust cloud or a cloud of plasma and dust that stretches between stars. And if it's all self-organizing to a point where this becomes a single entity with multiple layers, you were talking about something that far beyond matter, number one, because now we think that only maybe 5 or 10% of the universe is matter. All the rest is dark energy and dark matter. And now we have some concept of what even that may look like. That may be a sentient mixture of electrons, dust, and plasma. Um, so, I mean, it's an entirely different way of looking at things, but it also, for me, not that it's right, wrong, or otherwise, but my gut feels comfortable with the fact that, if we're talking about sentient beings, why couldn't it be plasma? Why couldn't it be something that is so far beyond us, that has sentience and intelligence far beyond anything that we can imagine, because we're matter based? The difference between matter and energy and time and all that is what they're fooling around with as far as the physics, the physics that we're talking about now. So I think that's kind of where I'm at this point in time. I'm not making any judgments about it because I don't have enough data to really make any type of knowledgeable judgment. But it opens up an area of possibilities that I feel comfortable looking at and thinking about. I don't know if that helps, but that's
It does help, Joe, and it's an amazing time to be alive. It's an amazing time on this planet right now, dealing with these subjects that are finally showing themselves and creating discussion and deep thinking about who we are, where we came from, and what else is out there. Um, Other things too to consider is that I think that if ETs came to this planet, and I know they already have, but I'm just saying if they look similar to us, I think we'd have an easier time to deal with that. But if beings are looking at like insects, praying mantis, other kinds of forms of life that are, shall we say, hard on the eyes as far as what we think of as normal or acceptable, people are going to have a much harder time trying to assimilate that and communicate with that sort of a being. Also, obviously, English is not their first language. God only knows if it's going to be through thought or other processes to communicate. So there's a huge amount of factors that are going to influence how we maybe welcome or not, or even fear what's coming, hopefully coming into our knowledge. Or maybe it's all of that. Maybe it's a smattering of everything, like you're saying, that we will be uh, dealing with in various ways. I want to go back to Hal a second. And Hal, I want to ask you if you were part of a committee that was officially going to be there when a starship was going to land, and you were going to be asking them questions, what kind of questions would you ask an ET?
Hmm, good thought. I just Before I answer that, I want to go back to one thing you said a moment ago.
Sure.
You said that depending on what they look like, and I think you mentioned insectoid. And I think a lot of the reaction will be what a person associates them with. Now, I think people would have a lot of trouble with insect if they were insectoid, because you're going to immediately draw it to, praying mantises. They're insects. The insects are taking over. I think you're going to have to deal with that type of association.
And when you're seeing something like that, I think it's normal to fear something that's totally not in your world, has never been in your world, and you're looking at beings that are very, very different than us.
Right.
Skin, go
There's
ahead.
a famous book. Of course, I can't remember the name of it now. Might be Childhood's End, but the
Asimov.
it's the ETs do come to Earth, and they're incredibly benevolent, and they do more for the planet than anything, but they will not show themselves because you find out at the end of the book they're tall, red-skinned, have horns, and a forked tail. So they
I
can't show
I
themselves.
once dated someone just like that, by the way. It's interesting. No, but your point is a good one. And Joe, I want to ask you the same question. Um, if you had the opportunity to meet for the first time and you were at what would you like to know about our planet, about us? What kinds of questions would you ask?
That's an interesting question. Um, well, first of all, I think that again, if life exists on multiple levels and multiple frequencies and different even different levels of reality, um, that's kind of a hard question because I think finding the common ground would be most difficult. There's one thing that came to mind, and you mentioned it early on about the nuclear tests being stopped because aliens are afraid that we're going to create something that's going to be harmful to the rest of our neighbors in space. Um, what happened was back in 1962, there was a nuclear above ground nuclear test, a series of them, and they took place at Johnston Atoll, which is not too far from Oahu. It's a couple hundred miles to the south and a little bit to the west of Oahu. But the tests that they were experimenting with, there were two series of tests. One of personal interest to me is that the only time a nuclear warhead for a Nike Hercules missile was ever tested by being fired on a missile took place in the last of the tests that took place from Johnston Island. But before that, there was another series of tests from Johnston Island where they were testing multiple megaton warheads for, I believe it was Thor Atlas or Thor Delta ballistic missiles. And one of these, and they were also setting off nuclear explosions anywhere from 68,000 feet all the way up to 280 miles into space. So it was some very, very pointed tests of nuclear weapons, one of which was I believe it was a 10 megaton warhead, was set off at a fairly high altitude. And part of the preparation for the test, they had three aircraft with very, very high speed specialized cameras on board, plus one of these cameras on the ground on the atoll. And what they were going to do, they were going to film this 10 megaton explosion high in the atmosphere from four different angles. And they did that. They started the countdown. The missile was fired, reached a certain altitude, and it exploded in a massive explosion. To give you an idea, the range of the explosion, the bombs that were dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki were in the 15 to 22 kiloton range. That's thousands of tons of TNT. What they were testing here was in the 10 megaton range, a megaton being in the millions of pounds of TNT. So 10 million pounds of TNT is the equivalent of very, very large and deadly explosion, putting out a lot of radiation and blast effect and everything. Well, what happened is when they aired the videos from these four cameras, three of which were on aircraft flying at high altitude, and one was on the ground shooting up into where the test was taking place. When they looked at the film, they actually saw that there was a very large object that came out of the middle of the explosion and it fell straight down. That all four cameras recorded it. Now, this is amazing that anything would survive a hydrogen bomb explosion, but it did, and it fell into the lagoon. And of course, in the area, the Navy had a task force of a number of ships that were observing and providing protection for the tests and everything else. Well, one of these ships was an ocean-going tugboat with a dive crew on board. And the object, whatever it was gigantic because you could see it was a spherical object. And it fell all the way down and landed in the lagoon itself and sank to the bottom in about 75, 80 feet of water, I think it was. Well, anyway, the Navy put a diver over the side from this ocean going tug. And with the orders, the guy was to locate the object and, check it out. Well, he got down there and he finally saw it. And he described the object being the size of an aircraft carrier. Okay.
Wow.
Now, this is all Navy records, but it has not come out in disclosure. And this was actually in the National Archives. The data about this was in the National Archives, which in of itself is amazing. So anyway, the diver goes down and he sees this gigantic object. The captain of the tugboat said, "Go up to it and touch it." Now, this thing just came out of a hydrogen explosion. How it even survived is, beyond comprehension. Anyway, the diver went up and he didn't want to do it. He was going to disobey the orders. And finally, the captain told him again, touch the object. That is your tasking. So the guy went up. When he went to touch it, his hand went through it. It was like a gelatinous mass or something. And it stayed on the bottom for several days. Now, meanwhile, the Navy's trying to figure out how they're going to raise it and how they're going to tow it to a place where they can investigate what in the world it is. Well, after about 3 or 4 days, this thing came to life and took off straight up out of the water and up into space. Now, this is all documented. This is the amazing thing. Now, anything that could survive a hydrogen explosion like that and be able to take off and fly again is not from here, obviously. And it can't even be described as being something we have even a remote concept of how it works. So the reason I bring this up is because there are thousands of reports that have been made over the years to the military and by the military. And all the disclosure we're seeing is 200 or 300 reports that somehow got into the public domain, but not the ones out of the National Archive. So my question is, what the hell is going on here? Who's messing up on this? Or why is this being done in such a manner? So maybe it's that we're not supposed to know these things, not so much maybe by our government, but maybe by whatever the beings or intelligences are that are in charge. Maybe that's part of what we're seeing here. Now, I don't know if that answered your question. It probably didn't, but I felt that it's something that had to be brought out and had to be considered somehow, and then weigh that against everything that we're talking about, whether it's insectoids or whether it's plasma beings or it's electricity. They even now believe electricity has sentience. Okay, so we're trying to wrap our heads around something that's probably far beyond our pay grade at this point. And tell you the truth, it probably causes a big headache when you try to think about it and weigh it. So does it mean we stop? No, but I think what we have to do is broaden our reach to understand that there was far more going on around us than, either the pictures or the eyewitnesses or even what happens during nuclear explosions. Anyway, that's my ruminations here.
Joe, can I ask you a quick question about what you were talking about?
Sure, Hal.
The object that fell into the lagoon, was
Hmm.
there a radiation reading off of it? since it was just in a bomb?
There would have to be, but it was not mentioned. Now, the thing was, there's more to the story, and the story really does get even more fascinating because historically, what happened. Number one, the diver, when his hand went through it, and they finally got him to the surface, he had a total mental collapse. He had a total breakdown. They had to medevac him off the island and get him to Tripler Army Hospital in Hawaii. And then it took 2 years of intense therapy, either in Walter Reed or wherever, that he was finally able to get out of the hospital, out of the treatment, and back into the service so he could finish out his hitch. Okay, he would have retired from the Navy. Now, he was last seen alive at Guantanamo, okay, the Navy base in Cuba. And he was in the EM club there, Enlisted Men's Club, sitting down, having drinks with a bunch of other enlisted men. He was a chief petty officer. His rating was diver. He was a Navy diver. Chief petty officer was his rank. And what happened was he told somebody about the incident from his firsthand experience. And then 2 weeks later, he died in a car crash.
Oh, brother. Oh, my
Okay, now
goodness.
you can't make this stuff up. This is all documented and true. Now, the thing is, who has been doing all the research on this was an Australian. Matter of fact, I was put on to him by Admiral Tim Gallaudet. Tim Gallaudet was a rear admiral in the Navy, a young admiral. And when he got out, he's the one that's leading up to a lot of the disclosure. He's the one that believes that there are underwater bases. He told me all about this. And the underwater bases, we don't know exactly where they're at. We don't know how many there are, but it's a strong belief and accurate because a lot of the sightings that have been taking place take place in certain parts of the Pacific, off of Puerto Rico, and various other locations around the world. Now, if that's the case, and these advanced civilizations are living under the water, or even in deep underground bases, okay, like in New Mexico, Dulce, or Area 51, or wherever. That means that these things have been here for a long time. They have been doing things. They have been observing and learning about us, learning about our capabilities, and also been able to manipulate our weapons. They've done it to us. They've done it to the Russians. They've probably done it to other nuclear powers as well. So, there's something. If somebody wanted us to know something, and I'm not saying it's our government or it's even the human aspect of it. If somebody wanted us to know something, we would know it empirically. Okay. It would not be kept, nothing would be kept from us. Now, the question you have to ask yourself, what is the end game here? And whose end game is it? Is it ours? Or is it some alien or multiple alien, a conglomeration of various alien species, because there's so much more going on and we have more evidence of it, not so much what's coming out of, all that's anecdotal. I mean, even what I told you is kind of anecdotal, even though the admiral knows about this security expert from Australia who did all the legwork on it and found it all. So we have that empirical data, but we still don't have the empirical data of what everything is. We just know all the periphery. And that's all we've ever had since day one, except if you want to say that the Aztecs and the Incas and the Olmecs and the Egyptians and the Babylonians and maybe they had direct direct contact with the creatures themselves, but we still don't know exactly what the relationship was. The Sumerian aspect, they were here for gold, and they needed slaves to be able to go out and mine the gold for them. So they created Homo sapien sapien. Okay. So, but we don't know. We still don't know exactly, and we may never know. So,
Joe, this information is incredible, and I've never heard that story before. You're the first person to disclose that, and it's hugely important. And thank you so much for bringing that to our attention. That was out of the blue, and what a story that is. Oh my goodness, on so many different levels too. And what you're saying too is who is controlling what? What is controlling what? And it's certainly not one government. I don't believe that for a second. I don't think anybody does. And who is deciding what we know and what we don't know? And what happened to the world transparency? Because when you withhold information from people, you are controlling their knowledge of their lives and their world. And this has been going on, and it's outrageous. I think that truth is truth and should be shared. And when you're starting to, we won't tell them this and we won't tell them that, that is control. And I would have to say it is a wrong thing to do. And I just think it is on many, many levels. And then who's got the secrets and how will they be used? How will that technology be used? And it's a manipulation of every single man, woman, and child on this planet. So this is huge information, and it's important information, and it's high time that we really take as a planet take a look at this and rethink what we're going to do about the situation.
I agree with you, Nick. I think part of the problem here, and again, we have to look at this from a different perspective, because nothing at the human level really makes sense. If you stop and think about it, what you're saying is spot on correct. And it's not rocket science that we have to figure out who is doing this and why are they doing it. Well, I think it goes way beyond our pay grade, the human pay grade. I'll put it that way. I have a funny feeling. Some people have glimpses of what's going on. For instance, uh, back 10 years ago or whatever, they had the whole thing about the 1% controls everything. Well, they're wrong. It's not 1/10. It's not 1%. It's 1/10 of 1%. It's probably around 6,000 people. Okay, out of the entire Earth population that is in control of 90% of everything that we touch, see, feel, hear, smell, whatever. Okay, but they're not the ones that are in control either. I think that, the conspiracy, if you want a conspiracy, here's a conspiracy for you. Suppose that an overarching control mechanism has been put in place, has been put in place for a while. Okay. Let's say that there are the people that control the governments. It's not the government. Most of the names you wouldn't recognize. Okay. And that's that 1/10 of 1%, or roughly 7,500 people. Let's say about 7,500 people. And those people are sitting there manipulating. Well, it's a Bill Gates. Why does Bill Gates feel comfortable losing 10% of the world population to COVID or whatever? Why does he feel so comfortable doing that? What is his overarching control? Is he in control, or is he dancing to somebody's marionette? To me, that makes more sense. The same thing, everything else that we see that doesn't seem to make sense. The politics, they're crazy on all sides. It looks like the human race is just one big nutcase. Okay. But
There's
there's something
there's
that's
certainly
driving it.
there's certainly also like just like you're saying, a drive to, and this is in our face, control the population numbers, to minimize them, to make them smaller. Why? And here it comes, because they, whatever they is, don't need us all. They need us, a fraction of us, to do their bidding, so to speak, whatever they need to have done. So why would they not want to eliminate a lot of the world population? How would you do that? How about inoculations, saying that they're
Exactly.
good for you and that they'll prevent disease and everything else, and actually they're doing the exact opposite. And we were, as you know, this has been going on for many, many years, and the covert, uh, outrageous lies that Fossey is finally beginning to face the charges. He should have been facing that when AIDS came up, and a lot of we're talking tens of thousands of people died, and it was because of Fossey's decisions and manipulation. And so here we go again in another round, and now it's covert, and all that's going on. And when you hear, even now, even today, yes, get your boosters and inoculate your babies and your children. When I hear that, I am sure you feel the same way. I'm outraged, absolutely outraged. And where's the research? Where are the numbers? They're not around. They have made up numbers and to make them look good. I mean, that is outrageous. That can't be allowed ever again. And we really
Okay,
have to
Nick,
look
let's
into that.
take this one step further. I'm going
Sure,
to go off what Joe said.
sure.
So you have a pyramid of who's controlling what to, at the top. And okay, so let's say now you have a combination of ETs and people controlling things. Take it one step further, and you have some type of ET agenda controlling things. So you're talking about one form of morality. You may not be talking about their form of morality. You're going
Exactly.
by a complete, you don't know what system they're using. You don't know what they consider moral, not moral, or whatever. Because take it back to the human race on a different level. The translations of the Bible, which I will now upset a lot of people, was not written in English, but the Ten Commandments, it is thou shalt not kill, it's thou shalt not murder, which justifies a certain amount of killing. So you
Yes.
don't know exactly what morality you're talking about.
Good point. Thank you,
Yeah.
Hal. Good point on that.
Excellent point, Al.
Yeah, and again, it goes into so much more. I love old movies, and they were showing New York about 125 years ago, and I was watching some of those, and I'm thinking, that wasn't long ago. That is not a long ways away when we're seeing covered wagons, we're seeing horses being used for transportation, we're seeing dirt roads, and 125, 150 years is a blink compared to where we are now. Again, in a lot of ways, it's like children with very dangerous toys, whether it be bombs or other forms of energy manipulations. We really have to watch our step worldwide, worldwide. And I have to say, it's because I'm an animal lover, and when I see bombs going off and parts of the ocean and all the ocean life, all forms of ocean life are being affected by that, of course, or killed. And the birds in the sky are getting some of that radiation or whatever else it is, and then flying to other places. And you're seeing this is not a good idea. This is destruction on an amazing level of inaccountability. You're taking a very powerful thing and doing experiments with it, and then trying to find out what happened to all the life, all the plants, all the air that we're breathing, and it doesn't stop in a wall. This goes out like a weather everywhere. It's not like a wall that a little contained area where you're doing these experiments. That's insanity. And who gave them the right to do that? Just like CERN. I'm very concerned about CERN because that's another whole area that, well, we're experimenting, we're trying different things. Well, um, I'm very worried about that. That's one of the most powerful instruments ever created, one of the biggest instruments, and they're doing experiments. Well, what happens when the experiment goes wrong? Who fixes it? Any comments on that, guys?
You know, it's interesting that you mentioned the CERN. The gentleman that was in charge of the antenna that I operate,
Yep.
he's the head of the Princeton's physics, electrical engineering physics department. Okay, at Princeton University. He just retired, but the one thing he's doing, he's moving to Switzerland because he's also been one of the senior members. There's two sensor devices, and the main one that they actually uh, have developed or they've identified. Last time I spoke with him, he said we had 57 identified 57 different particles. The 12th particle was the God particle, or the one that's known as the God particle. That was done back in 2012. But since then, we're up to 57 particles now because they have improved the devices, put more power into it, and of course, putting all that power in. The concern is that they are actually able to manipulate space and time, going along with Einstein's theory. It's over 100 years old. And but the thing is that it's also capable of opening portals, they believe. And the portals, we just don't understand them, but we know they're there because actually Einstein was able to describe them even back during his general theory of relativity and his special theory of relativity. So that's what we're looking at now as far as powering spacecraft that can approximate going faster than the speed of light. So, but all the things that are coming out of the CERN, first of all, the the dedication of the CERN area, the CERN device, they had a gigantic ceremony, and it was a pagan ceremony. I mean, they had pagan people dancing around and everything else. Not to make a value judgment about it, but apparently, their motivations were looking at a different area than maybe the mainstream was looking at, generally speaking. So if they are ripping tearing a hole in the fabric of the universe, creating a portal that can allow things to come in or things to go out, well, guess what? That's a multiverse. That's everything that they're talking about. And now we're starting to have evidence of it. Even at Skinwalker Ranch, they believe that the portal that's there, they have all types of UFOs coming out. They show up out of nowhere and they disappear. And they've actually marked the boundaries of a portal. They still don't know exactly what it is because it's beyond our physics capabilities to understand it. Maybe we'll learn about it in the next year or two. Okay. But the thing is, that was because we don't know how all this works and that things have been popping into our reality and leaving our reality over the years. Now we're starting to get an inkling of the science that may be attached to it. Before that, it was superstition. But now we're getting into an area where, our physics is starting to getting an idea about how these things work. So that's another thing, another reason I believe that if there is a super intelligence, okay, and that super intelligence, let's say for argument's purposes, it is plasma, it is dust, and it is electrons, all mixed together and all interoperating together and evolving together and developing intelligence. Okay. Um, Now, do we need the human race? No, probably not, because only less than 10% of the known universe is matter. Okay. Everything else is something else. And it probably falls more into the line of plasma, dust, and electrons. Okay. Dark energy and dark matter. I mean, even Robert Wilson, I had a chance to ask him about it about 7 or 8 months ago. And Dr. Wilson's he and Dr. Penzias are the ones that came up with the Big Bang Theory about 50 years ago. That's still in effect. Okay. It has not been disproven yet. It may be soon, but it hasn't been disproven yet. And when I asked him about dark energy and dark matter, or why the universe is going faster the further it gets from the epicenter of the big explosion, the Big Bang, he said, I don't know. He said, all I could think of is either dark energy and dark matter. Now, this is bringing us closed loop. This is bringing us back to the original discussion because this may be the mysterious component that covers the matrix. If we're living in a matrix, this is nothing better to support the theory of a matrix. So anyway, we could go on and on and on about it, but I think that it's getting much closer to a reality that we can sink our teeth into.
Klaus Schwab, who was until recently
Yeah.
the head of the World Economic Forum,
Yep.
and and if you've ever seen that website or if you've ever heard a speech by him, I can't imagine you wouldn't be outraged and frightened because of the outrageous claims that they're making and what the control that they want and they're doing everything they can to get it. One of the quotes, I think it was from the website of the World Economic Forum, was, "You'll have nothing, but you'll still be happy.
You'll be
We will
happy.
give you what you need to be happy, but we will have everything else." Oh
Uh,
my God, right? And
exactly.
Stern being multi-billion dollars, who paid for that? Where is that? I never saw anybody say that we did. So where is
CERN
that
is
money
paid
coming
for
from?
by an international conglomerate of governments and business.
Exactly. Matter of fact, this goes back to the Rio Accords, and out of the Rio Accords came something called Agenda 21.
Ah,
Came out of the
yeah.
United Nations. Now, if anybody, the first project in New Jersey that fell under the auspices of Agenda 21 happened right here in Monmouth County, Long Branch, the city of Long Branch. And the whole thing was predicated upon what came out of Agenda 21. Now, Agenda 21 was throughout, there were multiple areas within the United Nations' own website that had everything. It was all there. The numbers were there. Now, the numbers that were used for the Rio Accords, people do not know this. This is one of those things that has been glossed over and forgotten. But what happened in the mid 1960s, the RAND Corporation, RAND stands for Research and Development, and they only did studies for the US government, primarily the Department of Defense and the Department of Energy. Okay. Now, the study was asked for by Congress, and they were concerned in the mid 60s about all the starvation and famine that was taking place in Africa. There are hundreds of thousands of people dying of famine. And what happened was, so Rand Corporation decided to do a study, and they looked at the world situation as it was in the mid 60s. Now, in the United States, there were about 185 million people. Okay. We're now up to around 360 million. Okay. The world population was only about 3.5 billion people. Now we're pushing 8 billion people. Okay. Now, that study came out with a bunch of recommendations. And the recommendations that they came out, now this is before the Rio Accords, but it was used by the folks that did the Rio Accords. They used this study along with one or two other studies as the underpinnings. Well, anyway, the recommendation that they came up with, they said the optimum number of people for the entire world, now this is 1966, was 500 million people.
Whoa, wow.
550 million. 550 million. Okay, now they also came up with numbers for each country. Okay, that came out of the real. That's the optimum number of people for the United States in 1980s was 55 million.
Joe, I
Okay,
see
think
by the
about these
clock,
numbers.
Joe, I see by the clock that this hour goes by so fast, and we are in a place here far from the end of the program. So, I'd like to do is to suggest to both of you a part two where we can continue on the subject because there's a lot of factors here, and we need to do that. So, I want to just thank Joe. You're the best. Thank you so much, sir. Hal, you're the best too. Thank you for coming and being part of the program. And I'd like to ask you to do a part two in the next month. We'll discuss the timing. So thank you both so much. These are important issues that we have to face. Every man, woman, and child will be affected by what we're talking about right now. It's important. So this is Nick Curto for Disclosure Network, signing off, having everybody to say, please read your research, see who's doing it, make sure that they're the real deal and that they're not just giving you lies. Examine, probe what's going on, and ask yourself who is behind all this and try to find out more about it. So that's it for tonight. Thank you both. More power to you and more power to everybody to get to the truth. We want transparency and we want it now. Thank you and good night.
Thank you, Nick. Good night.
Nolan,
Our book-provoking show. I'm looking forward to part two later this month or next month.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Hercules.
Hercules.
thank you.
Really good program.